My sister Ashley is being held in a secure psychiatric facility, awaiting trial as she poured bleach into my 10-month-old nephew's eyes, blinding him. We were all shocked as my sister has been nothing but a perfect mother to Oscar. She loved him, but we think she may have been overcome with grief after her husband Matthew died suddenly, which caused some sort of psychosis. But I received a letter from her yesterday telling a different story. And I believe her, so I'm posting it here in hopes that someone has come across something similar. And if you can offer any advice to help my family. Here's the letter I received, word for word. Dear Amy, the facility gave me a phone call, but I opted to write you a letter. As she's, or it's, unable to see, so she or it won't know I'm discussing the event that led me to this room. I need you to understand my actions. I'm keeping her or it here with me for as long as I can, but you need to know what happened. You need to help us. I've felt something wasn't right the moment Matthew and I started dating. I always felt like I was being watched, but if I mentioned it to him, he'd scoff at me. But I could tell he was uneasy too. When I touched him, he'd jump. He was always on edge. Things got progressively worse once I moved in with him. The watching feeling turned into seeing things out of the corner of my eye. Whispers in my ear even though I was alone. I told Matt all of this, but he just said I was paranoid and maybe I should just see a doctor. So I brushed it off, and that worked for a while, until I got pregnant with Oscar. I had forgotten the strange happenings as they hadn't happened for a while. But when I was 3 months pregnant, Matthew's whole personality changed. He withdrew from me, wasn't sleeping, was angry and irritated all the time, and I couldn't understand it. Oscar was wanted, we planned for him, so I asked him what the problem was, and he just replied that it felt like he was being haunted. This continued until I was 9 months pregnant, and Matthew came into the room happier than he's ever been. It was unusual, but I didn't want to ruin it. I finally had my Matt back. He took me to our favorite restaurant, and we had the best time. On the drive home, my curiosity got the better of me, as I asked him what had changed. How suddenly he felt happier and not haunted anymore. He apologized to me for everything. He explained that he thought he was being haunted since he was around 16 years old, and at first, he thought he was going crazy. No one believed him, so he started to ignore her, which worked until I started mentioning it, and it's almost like speaking about her gave her strength, and it began getting worse again for him, which is why he kept brushing it off, hoping I'd stop talking about it, which did happen. But when I got pregnant, it got worse for him, and there was no way of keeping her at bay. He said he had spent the last 6 months having night terrors, and felt like she was killing him from the inside out. He thought he was possessed, but then he read online that this only lasted for 6 months, and if you survived, then it would be over. He was happy because he won, and it was over now, and we could raise our family in peace. I didn't know if I believed him, but I was relieved to have my Matt back, and we could just be a normal family. It was short-lived. When we got home, I had pains in my lower tummy, so I had a bath and went to bed, leaving Matt watching football, and I drifted off to sleep, happy. But at around 2 a.m., I heard Matt shouting, so I rushed downstairs to see him staring at the corner screaming. He was saying things like, "No, You can't do this. I won." I called to him, but it was like he couldn't hear me. I looked over at the corner he was screaming at, but it was just a dark, empty corner. I ran and stood in front of him, hoping to calm him down, but his eyes were fully focused on that damn corner. He stopped screaming and his eyes widened, and his face almost contorted. I couldn't imagine the horror he was seeing. He turned away from me and walked slowly towards the kitchen. I called out to him, but he didn't reply, so I followed him asking, begging for an answer, and he walked over to the drawer and pulled out a knife. I was so scared. I cried about the baby and not to hurt us. He took the knife and slit his own throat. I ran over to him and held his body in my hand, whilst trying to find his phone in his pocket to call for help, and that is when I saw her, or it. At first, I saw feet standing next to Matt, and as I looked up, it was a woman in a dress wearing a blindfold. But the longer I looked, the less she, or it, looked like a woman. Her flesh was peeling off. It had blisters all over her face and arms. She was dirty. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. And Matt, with his last breath, said, "Don't look at her." So I didn't. I ignored her somehow and managed to call for help. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed with a baby next to me. The doctors told me I passed out, but they had to perform an emergency C-section as Matthew had stabbed me in the stomach before taking his own life. But I knew this wasn't true and was just thankful we were both safe. For the next 10 months, it has been invisible to me, and I've just ignored it. As Matthew said, I assumed it was the strongest it'd ever be that night she killed Matt and tried to kill us. So I thought ignoring it would work, but Oscar couldn't. How could he? He's only a baby. And he kept looking and trying to interact with it, which made it stronger. I don't know how it knew he was looking, because it's blindfolded, but it's almost like it knows anyway. And I feared for his life, and I did the only thing I could do, which was to blind him. I love him so much, and I couldn't lose him, and thought blinding him would protect him for life. Speak to Matt's mom and ask him about Laura. I've dreamt of her, and I think she is the key to ending this. But Amy, be warned. Do not speak about her, she'll know, and she'll come for you too. If you need to discuss her, write it down, and ignore any signs of something being there that shouldn't be. Please help us. Love always. Ashley. My family thinks Ashley is crazy, but I believe her. I'm meeting with Matt's mom tomorrow, as she's having Oscar overnight, and I'm going to speak to her about Laura. I'll keep this forum updated, as it may help other people in a similar situation. And again, please, if you have any advice about this, let me know. I need to help my sister.